Glory to everyone and have a great evening. Well, as they say, the deeper you get into it, the worse it gets, or the problems. Problems for Ukrainians abroad. And many Ukrainians have recently been leaving, departing, flying out, running away from Ukraine. And they were welcomed there by Hungary, Romania, and to a lesser extent Poland. And other countries that border directly with the country of Umbria, that is Ukraine. Smartphones are everywhere, even in Russia's homes, but now everything has changed dramatically. Suddenly, Ukrainian men subject to military service began to be denied temporary asylum. And now this is happening in almost all countries, with Spain being especially successful at it. Additionally, issues have begun in the Czech Republic, and Poland has always had some troubles. And now let's talk about this, but first, please subscribe to the channel. Remember, the more people subscribe, the more people will learn important information for themselves. Plus, there's also a Telegram channel. Just point your phone or tablet camera at it and you'll get right to it. Or there's a link to the Telegram in the description of this video, so go ahead and check it out. First, we're being told that Ukrainian men have been deprived of protection in the European Union. Who is considered a draft dodger? Pretty much everyone. Pretty much everyone who can leave the country under the current law, except maybe people with disabilities. During the war in Ukraine, men face restrictions on leaving the country. There's a certain category. Certain citizens may leave the country. Not all countries are granting asylum now, but many still do. Currently, for example, all European Union countries provide it, as well as a number of other states, including Norway, the United Kingdom, and Switzerland. The program has been extended until March 4, 2028. Do Ukrainians have the right to seek asylum? Yes, but you know, rights are a tricky thing because the law can be bent whichever way people want. And in the end, it's not just men. But today, there is information that even women can no longer get temporary asylum without a small amendment. Ukrainians can come to Europe and stay legally, in fact, even without temporary protection, but that's 90 days total within a 180-day period. Who has the right to leave Ukraine? Men under 22 years old and over 60 years old, persons recognized as unfit for service and or removed from military registration. Men with any group of disabilities, those accompanying a wife with a third group disability, fathers of 3 or more minor children. By the way, I remind you that in Ukraine, the MRI is currently considering the possibility of removing this point. That is so that those who have 3 children, 4, 5, or even 10 would go straight to the front. Why? Well, because some women started writing things like, "Why are these men better? What's going on? Let's send everyone to the front." Next, single fathers, employees exempt from mobilization who are going on a business trip, military personnel with command permission, drivers, volunteers, athletes going to competitions. And for those who, okay, now about Spain. I live directly in Spain, so I can share information with you from first-hand experience. And the truth is, they are not granting temporary protection at this time. And here's the most interesting part. The categories of men who can leave Ukraine are the ones I mentioned to you earlier. But they can't get temporary protection. Only people with disabilities can get it today. Why? Because, well, that's just how it turned out. And now only those men and some women who have a note saying not liable for military service, excluded from military registration, can get asylum. Everyone else, including those who are 18, not 23 or 25, do not get it. Today there are many, hundreds of refusals. This has literally happened in some regions of Spain. Will all this apply to other countries? I think it will. For now, we're monitoring the situation. And here we are being told that in Spain, Ukrainians are being denied temporary protection, that they are being checked in Reserve Plus. There is a city here called Alicante, and this is where they started denying Ukrainian men temporary protection. As far as I've heard, there are quite a lot of Ukrainians in that region, and over the course of several days at the beginning of August, they only let 3 people through. What are the updated requirements for Ukrainians? The same ones I mentioned, plus you also need printouts from Reserve Plus. And also this note stating that you've been removed from military registration. Naturally, the Reserve Plus document must be printed out and provided with a translation into Spanish. How to print it out, hand it over, and translate it? Well, that's not a problem anymore. That's not the sheriff's problem, right? It's the Indians' own problem. In other words, the Ukrainians. Here, a lawyer has sent over a long list of what's required. That is, 2 mandatory sets of documents. The first is confirmation of legal crossing of the Ukrainian border. And by the way, they haven't been stamping it for several months now, that's all. And the second is exactly the extract from Reserve Plus. It's very critical. This document must clearly state it. Removed from military registration or unfit for military service, unsuitable. But it must also specify why. The circumstance that led to this unfitness must definitely be stated. If Reserve Plus only has a deferral from mobilization, even with Alicante refuses to grant asylum. And the most interesting thing is that this is not just in Alicante, but it's already starting in other cities and countries as well. Today I also came across a video, apparently by a female lawyer or just an attorney. Well, an attorney is of course a lawyer. I mean someone who accompanies citizens to those kinds of places, to consulates and such. And here's what she says.
Good news from the Visa Center in Brno on August 10th. Today is August 10th, gentlemen, especially all of you who are asking whether you can or cannot get a visa. Listen carefully. Today, a young man, 25 years old, came for a visa. He has a deferment because his child has a disability. So for the entire period, basically until the end of the war. Here's what happened. He went to the Visa Center, but they told him that wouldn't work either. Right now, the main thing for you to be able to get a visa to the Czech Republic is this. I'm giving you the most up-to-date information. As of today, you need to have unfit written in Reserve Plus. If you don't have this, don't bother applying or seeking info. You won't get a visa in the Czech Republic. Be careful. If you're under 23, you can leave and handle everything without issues. If you are over 23 years old and you don't have unfit written, no deferrals work at all right now.
Well, here the situation is a little different. If in Spain, well, in that very Alicante, this already starts at 18, while in the Czech Republic, you see it's only from 23. In different countries, it's a bit different. Maybe cities and countries will adopt a unified approach and start doing the same thing, but for now, it's still a bit all over the place. On top of that, the Czech Republic is tightening the rules for Ukrainians. And temporary protection, again, is only available through military registration. EU countries, including the Czech Republic, have already tightened the rules. Not from March 1, 2027, but right now, starting from August 1, they have already tightened the conditions for granting temporary protection to Ukrainian citizens. This measure is due to Ukraine's need to replenish its armed forces. A porcupine must have its steel quills, which are apparently aimed against Russia. As they stated in Europe and America, well, what? We are no longer spending our own resources, not spending our own people. They said this directly. Ukrainians are fighting, and then there's also that whole thing. We're using Ukrainians to do the fighting, and we can even make money ourselves, and look how much we're saving. A lot. It's the same in Europe, and the problem is people there also don't want to fight. In Germany, they conducted a survey about what young Germans would do if they were suddenly drafted into the army. 80% answered that they wouldn't do anything. They would just leave the country. Well, basically, it's the same everywhere, after many decades of relatively peaceful life, not counting, of course, various economic ups and downs. People don't want to fight and don't see why states need it right now. Well, there was the Soviet Union and also Nazi Germany. They had an ideology and millions of citizens were devoted to that idea. Whether that's good or bad, let's not discuss it now, but it existed, and people fought for the ideology, or for Comrade Stalin, or for the Third Reich. I'm not comparing the countries of Stalin to Hitler right now. Stop asking in the comments, are you against Stalin, are you against Hitler? I'm presenting historical facts without discussion, without subjectivity. Well, and millions of people were ready to die back then. Now what is there to die for? For candle factories, for deputies, for all these presidents? What for? Homeland? Well, yes, homeland. But now, homeland is like in that movie Brother. As one taxi driver said, it's where your, let's say, backside is warm. And now many people see it this way. That is homeland. Not exactly homeland, but at least the country where you live, that's your new homeland. You live there, you build your own destiny. And cosmopolitanism, in my opinion, is a good thing. Because if you have problems in one country that aren't caused by you, but by the country itself or a neighboring country, then... For example, like the Russian Federation creates problems for Ukraine. By suddenly attacking Ukraine, you can change your place of residence. That's the essence of modern life, and that's wonderful. And when someone starts to interfere with this, it's no longer called democracy, or freedom to express your will, or freedom of opinion. It's called coercion and obligation. And all of this existed in those very totalitarian states that journalists love to describe, saying how bad it was there, but where is it now? Alright, you want to say that things are good in Ukraine or that things are good in Russia? For some people, yes, but for the majority, no. In Ukraine, it's especially good for those who are exempt, like journalists and so on. There are all sorts of beneficiaries there, barbershop types whose faces don't even fit on the screen anymore. They're so massive with huge interoral ganglia. Well, it's actually getting scary. But what's going on with the EU? Czechia, let's go back to August 5th. Starting from August 5th, just like Spain, Czechia stopped providing temporary protection to men from Ukraine, that is, from 23 to 60 years old. This was announced by none other than the head of the Czech Ministry of Internal Affairs, Lubomír Metnar. According to him, Ukrainian men will only be able to obtain a status that allows them to stay in Czechia if they confirm through the Reserve Plus app that they have already fulfilled their military duties. This covers initial, primary, and repeat temporary protection status applications and those for family reunification. The only ones not affected by the new rule are those who are already sitting pretty with temporary protection status. For them, everything is fine for now, and most likely, it will remain that way. Especially if they work and know the language. About 2 years ago, probably when I just started developing this channel, I said that you need to learn languages and work. No one will tolerate people except for rich people who spend huge amounts of money in their countries. And even in Poland, for example, there are some Polish people who say that rich Ukrainians live in hotels, don't work, and have such expensive cars. Well, I want to ask, so what? Do these rich Ukrainians get any benefits in Poland? It seems like there aren't any, and if there are, it's just pennies. So what? Overall? If a person lives in an expensive hotel, well, they're investing in the hotel business of Poland or whatever country they're in. Rich people are welcomed everywhere. And in Spain as well, I don't know about now, but before they used to give out golden visas. If you bought real estate for €500,000, you would get a card. Everything was fine. I have acquaintances like that. So that's a pretty crappy point of view. And about that Minister of Internal Affairs. He says that starting tomorrow, well, that's August 6th. I'm speaking as of yesterday, so to speak. We are stopping the provision of temporary protection to Ukrainian citizens of conscription age. This decision will reduce the number of new arrivals by tens of %. Thanks to this, the strain on our resources will decrease, which will provide relief for the Czech healthcare and social welfare systems. What about Spain next? There is also a huge issue now, just as I mentioned. For now, there is a separate message saying they are asking for Reserve Plus. Plus, it's not only men but even women as well. Online, people have shared how all these new things work. Here they say that it's quite possible that women liable for military service may be asked for proof. Some are being asked for their Reserve Plus record as well, plus they're already being asked for it when trying to get temporary protection. European countries don't look into whether a person has a deferment or whether they had the legal right to leave the country. If Reserve Plus shows them as liable for military service, then they're most likely going to be denied protection. And again, there's a lot about Spain, but we've already talked about it before. Subscribe to my TikTok and Instagram. I clearly list the documents you need there as well. As for other countries, in Germany, for example, we're told that the number of asylum applications has continued to decrease. In July, it dropped by 50 compared to the same period in 2025 and by 75 compared to July 2024. The same trend is observed throughout the entire European Union. In July, 4,311 applications were submitted in Germany. Previously, it used to be, well, for example, around 72,000 per year for the whole year. In January, the German Interior Ministry reported that a total of 113,000 initial applications were submitted in the country for the entire year 2025. That's 50,000 less than the previous year when it was 168,000. And the head of the Interior Ministry calls this trend a success of the ruling coalition. Well, it's a strange perspective, of course, but let it be so. All this is being observed throughout the entire European Union, and it's connected to the reinstatement of EU migration law. In June, the Common European Asylum System began operating, and it conducted preliminary checks at the EU borders. For asylum seekers, they offer expedited processing of their applications. On top of that, Germany continues to check documents at its land borders, where there used to be quite a lot of illegal entries, so now this has already stopped. That's how things are. Plus, Germany is also restoring the mechanism for returning asylum seekers. Take Spain and that influx of migrants from Morocco. 60,000, or according to some reports, already 70,000 have broken through into the Spanish enclave of Ceuta, where in fact only 86,000 people live. And just imagine 60,000 or 70,000, almost the same number, start roaming the streets. That's just crazy. Most were sent back, but a few thousand stayed, and these few thousand are making their way into Europe since there are no benefits or anything like that in Spain. That's why Germany is reinstating returns. Here we're told, for example, about a 22-year-old Somali woman who arrived last March through Italy and she's being sent back, but Italy refuses to accept her. In short, Rome and Berlin have reached an agreement to resolve such issues, but so far nothing good has come of it. This doesn't look good for those migrants. According to the German side, an effectively functioning Dublin mechanism is the most important condition for a successful reform of the common European asylum system. It is intended to determine the country responsible for considering asylum applications. This avoids a situation where an applicant submits applications to several member states at once. But again, there are problems with this woman. She left Somalia, arrived in Germany, and then she returned to Italy because they said, sorry, Italy has to handle your case. And finally, look, about 4.5 million Ukrainians are now under temporary protection of the EU. That's a huge number, but most of them are already working, studying, each in their own way. As of now, for example, in Latvia, there are 31,000 people, but in other countries, of course, there are much more. In Germany, for example, there are over 1 million, in Poland almost 1 million, and in the Czech Republic almost 400,000 Ukrainians are present. They also say that in 24 out of 27 countries, the number of people under temporary protection. Over the past month, this number increased the most in Italy, the Czech Republic, and Germany, while in Poland, Belgium, and Ireland it actually fell below the previous level. So that's how things stand at the moment. Subscribe to this channel if you want to know more details. I think this situation will keep developing. It will be very active, so to speak. And I'll try to keep you updated on the events so you don't lose your way. Goodbye, everyone.
Dear Ukrainians, we are at the most difficult point of this war. They have plans to demoralize us by cutting off electricity, water, sewage, transportation, and fuel, and then Ukrainians will realize that they have to tighten their belts. That would be fair, and when everyone shares the burden of war, it's easier to win.